Over the years, I've come to learn that faith isn't just something you read about in a book or hear about on a Sunday morning. For me, it became as real as the ground beneath my feet, forged in the most unexpected and terrifying of circumstances. I've had conversations with what I can only describe as a guardian angel. I've faced down dark entities, and I've even been physically attacked by one, an attack that ultimately had no power over me. These experiences have taught me that the spiritual world is very real, and our place in it is more secure than we often believe. But even with all that, I must confess, my faith hasn't always been as strong as I would like. It's easy to have doubts, to question things. That is, until the day I died. It happened on October 8, 1986. I was the program director and station engineer at a radio station in Utah, a job that I loved but one that involved working with some very powerful and dangerous equipment. That particular afternoon, I was tasked with a routine inspection of our 5,000-watt FM transmitter. It was a beast of a machine, about the size of a small closet, humming with immense power in the center of a quiet, isolated room. The air in the transmitter room always had a unique smell, a mix of ozone and warm electronics, a smell that meant everything was running as it should. I had no idea that this ordinary day, this routine task, was about to change my entire understanding of life and death. I was sitting on the cold concrete floor, tracing a circuit with my metal flashlight, trying to do a quick visual check from the transformer to the rectifier. It was something I'd done a dozen times before, but this time was different. In a flash of brilliant, violent light, 4,500 volts at half an amp arced from the machine. The electricity found the path of least resistance, my metal flashlight. It surged into my right hand, shot across my chest, and blew out of my left forearm. An inhuman scream tore from my lungs, a sound of pure agony that I had no control over. In the studio next door, the microphone was live. My scream went out over the airwaves, a moment of raw terror broadcast to listeners across western Wyoming, Montana, southern Idaho, and all of northern Utah. I didn't even realize I had screamed until the silence that followed. What happened next is impossible to measure in minutes or seconds. Time seemed to stretch and warp. My first sensation was bizarre, almost comical, like something out of a Saturday morning cartoon. I suddenly felt my arms stretched out wide, as if to their absolute limit. I had this vivid image of a cartoon character getting electrocuted, their body going stiff and their skeleton flashing like a neon sign. For a moment, I could see my own skeletal outline, a strange and detached observation. I remember looking down at my left arm, seeing it held out stiffly, and then realizing with a jolt of confusion that it wasn't my physical arm. It was just an outline, a shimmering, translucent shape of myself. Slowly, I turned my head to look forward, expecting to see the guts of the transmitter that had just attacked me. Instead, my world tilted on its axis. I was looking at the back of my own head, my own brown hair, the collar of my shirt. It was my body, sitting upright on the floor, completely still. A strange curiosity took over, and I felt myself drift forward, passing through some invisible barrier until I was suddenly looking out through my own eyes again. The world snapped back into its normal perspective. I looked down and saw my arms resting limply at my sides. To test what was happening, I tried to lean on my left arm, and in what I can only describe as a visual illusion, my forearm seemed to bend like rubber. The sight freaked me out, and with an involuntary spasm of thought, I leaped backward, instantly finding myself outside my body again, staring at my own back. Freed from the confines of my physical form, I began to explore this new reality. I looked around the transmitter room. Everything was exactly as it was moments before, the hulking equipment, the spare parts on a shelf, the concrete floor. There were no bright lights, no tunnels, no angels or demons waiting for me. It was just the room and me, or the new me. I examined my new body. I was like a perfect, invisible outline of myself, a subtle distortion in the air. I found I could pop in and out of my physical body at will, a strange and fascinating game. In the midst of this surreal experience, one thought became incredibly profound and clear. Death was completely painless. All the fear and agony of the electrocution was gone, replaced by a feeling of peace and contentment so deep it was unlike anything I had ever felt before. This peaceful exploration didn't last forever. Suddenly, I felt a distinct pressure on my back, like a firm but gentle hand pressing against me. It wasn't forceful or aggressive, but it was insistent, guiding me forward. As the pressure increased, a bizarre sensation began to wash over me. It felt like a zipper, starting from the base of my spine and moving upward, reconnecting me with my physical self. I felt my legs again, then my waist. The feeling moved up my torso and into my arms, all the way to my fingertips. With a final sense of connection, a final click into place, I was whole again. I was back inside my body, and I could no longer separate myself from it. As I was being pushed back, I didn't hear a voice, not with my ears anyway. It was more like a thought, a feeling, a piece of knowledge that was placed directly into my soul. The message was simple, direct, and unshakable. Though I can't recall the exact phrasing now, the essence of it has never left me. You are not yet finished. It wasn't a suggestion or a request. It was a statement of fact. My time wasn't up. There was more for me to do. In that moment, I didn't know who the message was from, but I knew it was the absolute truth. For 5 long years, I kept that story locked away inside me. It was too personal, too strange, too sacred to share. The world wouldn't understand. But then, one summer, I was serving as a counselor at a church camp. One night, sitting around with about 30 junior high kids in our cabin, I don't know why, but I felt compelled to finally tell them what had happened. I walked them through the whole experience. The shock, the scream, leaving my body, the feeling of peace, and the sensation of being zipped back together. But as I got to the part about the hand on my back and the message I received, something incredible happened. I froze mid-sentence. The cabin full of kids disappeared. The fire, the bunk beds, everything vanished. I was no longer in that cabin. I was back in 1986, but this time I wasn't seeing it from inside or just outside my body. I was watching the entire event from a third-person perspective, like a movie. And that's when I saw him. I saw the person who had pushed me, the one who had spoken to me. I saw my body sitting on the floor, and behind me stood a figure of incredible love and authority. It was Yeshua HaMashiach, the Hebrew name for Jesus Christ. I saw his hand on my back. I saw his mouth move as he imparted the words into my spirit. The kids in the cabin started getting worried, asking me what was wrong as I just stood there like a statue, staring into space, reliving the most important moment of my life and finally understanding who had saved me. As soon as the zipper feeling completed its journey and I was fully back in my body on that transmitter room floor, the door burst open. It was David, the station's general manager. The first thing that hit me was the overpowering smell of stale cigarettes on his breath, a smell so potent it could have woken the dead. He rushed over, his face etched with worry. "Are you all right? What happened?" he asked, his voice raspy. "We heard you scream." I just looked up at him, my mind still reeling, my body tingling with the after effects of being reanimated. All I could manage to say was, "I think I got shocked." David didn't hesitate. "Well, I think we should get you to the hospital," he said, and I certainly wasn't going to argue. He helped me to my feet, my legs feeling unsteady beneath me. I walked into the front office and sat down at the receptionist's desk to call my fiancée, Sarah. As I was waiting for her sister to put her on the phone, I noticed a strange smell. It was the acrid scent of something burned, like scorched fabric. I sniffed my right hand, then my left hand holding the phone receiver. I followed the smell down my arm, and then I saw it. I was wearing my favorite black members-only jacket, the style of the day, and right on the left sleeve, there was a perfect, pencil-sized hole burned clean through the material. My heart started to pound. I carefully took off the jacket. There, on my shirt sleeve, was another identical hole, perfectly aligned with the one in the jacket. With trembling fingers, I rolled up my sleeve, and my breath caught in my throat. The exit wound took up most of my outer left forearm, near the elbow. It was a massive, horrific burn. The flesh was white and rubbery with the consistency of a perfectly cooked turkey breast, and it was about the same size. There was a dark spot in the center surrounded by several thin, dark rings. It was horrifying, yet I felt no pain. Sarah finally got on the phone, and I tried to explain what happened, telling her to meet me at the hospital. The shock was finally setting in. When I arrived at the local hospital, I was rushed in immediately. A nurse began explaining that when someone is electrocuted, the path the electricity takes through the body destroys the tissue. All that dead tissue getting flushed through the kidneys can cause them to fail. To prevent this, they needed to insert a catheter. I'd had one before, years ago, and it was an experience I never wanted to repeat. "I'm not going to need one," I told them, trying to sound more confident than I felt. They insisted, so I asked them what I had to do to prove it. They handed me a cup and said, "Pee." I told them I could fill a bucket if they wanted. After I proved my kidneys were, miraculously, working just fine, they loaded me into an ambulance for the 70-mile trip to the University of Utah's burn clinic in Salt Lake City. At the burn clinic, I felt like a science experiment. I was laid out on a table while a team of about 6 to 8 interns, led by one doctor, poked and prodded at me. After about half an hour of this, an older man walked in. He had an air of authority, and I gathered he was the chief physician, the man in charge. He came over to me and, without a word, began massaging my feet and toes, conducting a thorough inspection. He was looking for the exit wound, which in most electrocution cases is on the feet as the current goes to ground. After a moment, he looked up at the lead doctor with a puzzled expression. "Where is the exit wound?" he asked. "I don't see an exit wound." The lead doctor, still working on my arm, replied without looking up, "The exit wound is on his left forearm." The chief physician moved to my side and saw the large, obvious wound. He examined it carefully, then moved down my left arm, checking my hand and fingers with intense focus. By now, some of the interns had stopped what they were doing, sensing that something unusual was happening. The chief physician looked up again at the lead doctor, his brow furrowed in deeper confusion. "I don't see an entrance wound here," he stated. "Where is the entrance wound?" At that question, a heavy silence fell over the entire room. Every single intern stopped mid-task. All eyes turned to the lead doctor, who also paused and looked up at his superior. "The entrance wound," he said slowly, "is on the right hand, between the thumb and the forefinger." A look of complete disbelief washed over the chief physician's face. He moved quickly around the table to my right side, took my right hand, and found the small but distinct first-degree burn where the electricity had entered my body. He stood there for a long moment, just looking. He looked at the small entry wound on my right hand. Then he looked across my body to the massive exit wound on my left forearm. Back to the right hand. Back to the left arm. He did this several times, as if trying to force his brain to accept something it knew was impossible. The path of the electricity was undeniable. In my right hand, straight across my chest and heart, and out my left arm. Everyone in the room stood silent, watching him process the impossible. Finally, he let out a long sigh, a sound of weary astonishment. The chief physician then looked away from the wounds and looked directly at me, into my eyes. His professional, clinical demeanor was gone, replaced by simple, human awe. "Well," he said, his voice full of wonder, "I have no idea how you did it or how I am even talking to you." He shook his head slowly. "Son, you should be dead. It's a miracle you are even here." Hearing those words from a man of science, a man who had likely seen everything, sent a shiver down my spine. I just lay there, soaking it all in. The only thing I could think about was how badly I wanted to get out of there and get a Whopper from Burger King. Things wrapped up pretty quickly after that. They gave me some antibiotic cream and a box of bandages, told me the wound would flush itself out over time, and sent me home. It took months for the wound to fully heal. Now all that's left is a round scar on my forearm, about 3.5 inches across. It still itches like crazy sometimes, and my arm has spasms every now and then from the nerve damage. Most days, the whole thing feels more like a dream than something that actually happened. But then the scar will itch, or I'll see it in the mirror, and it all comes rushing back. It's my permanent reminder of how real that day was. So now, perhaps you can understand why I say my faith isn't as great as others. My faith isn't blind. I have seen the other side. I have felt the hand of the Lord on my back, pushing me back to life. I have seen the entire event with my own eyes, from a perspective that gave me the whole truth. There is a verse in the Bible that says, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." I was a believer long before that day, but now, when my faith gets shaky, when I have doubts about my purpose, I have no excuses. I know what's waiting for us. I know who is in control. And I know that my work here is not yet finished.